So I've got some mixed opinions on this bad boy. Let's talk about him. So The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes by Suzanne Collins is the newest installment in the Hunger Games world, and it kind of acts as a prequel to the original series. For this review, the beginning part of this will be spoiler-free completely, and then at the end I might throw in a few spoiler thoughts, but I will clearly denote that, so don't worry. This book follows President Snow when he is 18, and he is living in the capital. He is going to the academy, going to university the next year. Ever since the war, his family has been kind of down on their luck. They had all their investments in District 13, and when District 13 was destroyed in the war, they kind of lost everything. So this year for the 10th Hunger Games, the capital has decided to pair up a capital child with each tribute from the districts to act as a mentor during the games. Whoever puts out the best showing as a mentor will get a free ride to the university. Snow really sees this as a great opportunity to better his and his family's position, so he is very excited. But when he goes to be assigned his tribute, he is assigned the girl from District 12, and he is very upset at this. He thinks that he is being sabotaged and that he has no chance now of winning or being successful at all. But when the tributes are pulled and the girl from District 12 quickly becomes a fan favorite, Snow figures that he might not be as down on his luck as he thought. So that's basically the premise of this story. Now let's dive into my thoughts. Just to give you an overview of kind of what I thought of this book, I liked parts of it and I disliked parts of it. I ultimately think I'm going to go with a 2-star rating because I think I disliked it more than I liked it, although I do think it has some redeeming qualities overall. So first of all, let's get into the characters. So I know quite a few people were worried that this was going to make President Snow a sympathetic character, make the reader sympathize with him, but it really doesn't. It's not a villain origin story in the traditional sense where there is some kind of terrible event that happens that turns the character evil, and you as the reader come to understand why they turned evil and to essentially sympathize with them. This story does not follow that traditional arc. This is just plain and simple President Snow's story, and there's really no one in this story to root for if we're being honest. None of the characters are particularly likable, although they are explored in depth and you come to understand a lot of them, which I think is a strong point. Although I did not come to like him, I do think that President Snow is a very, very interesting character. This book shows him as he is 18, really entering the adult world and coming into himself, and he definitely is a very vain, conceited, power-hungry, manipulative, status-obsessed kind of character. But throughout the story, it also shows that he has the capacity for friendship, familial love, he cares about people, but throughout the book, these positive traits are slowly outweighed by his negative traits, and I think that's really interesting as it kind of subverts the traditional protagonist slash hero character arc where they grow and come into themselves and become better people throughout the story, whereas this is the opposite. You kind of see Snow regress as a character. You don't see him become completely evil in this book, but you see him lean into those negative traits more and more as the story goes on. So I really thought that was interesting and unique and a good way to tell this story. I also really appreciated how much Snow's character was developed. We learn a lot about Snow's thoughts and see his actions and some analysis into why he did these things and why he thinks this way, and I think this book was really successful in developing his character in that way because as a reader we don't sympathize with him, but personally I at least by the end felt that I really understood him. I could see why he made the decisions that he made and why he went through with the actions that he went through. I could totally understand even if I didn't agree with them, and I think that's all you really need in a character like this. I think that was Suzanne Collins' goal in writing this book, was for us to understand Snow, not to sympathize with him or agree with him, just to understand where he was coming from, why he became what he became. And even though I did think that was successful, I do think it could have been more successful if this book was written in the first person. So the original Hunger Games series was so engaging because we were in Katniss's head the entire time and we were fully immersed in her thoughts and her feelings and why she was doing the way things she was doing, and we were thinking through everything with her, seeing everything with her, and I felt that was really such a strength of the original series. It helped us understand Katniss even more as a character, and I kind of think it would have been beneficial for Suzanne Collins to write this book in first person as well, so we could really get into Snow's head even more, because the third person narrative did create kind of a one-step remove between the reader and Snow, and I just think if we had gotten just that farther into his head, it would have been an even stronger book. Moving on to some of the other more secondary characters, the other big main character in this story is Lucy Gray, who is the tribute from District 12 who Snow is paired up with in the games. She's supposed to be the one that you root for in this story. I believe she is the main sympathetic character, but to me throughout the entire entire novel, she just seemed like a caricature. She didn't seem like a real person, and I really felt like I lacked understanding of her character. The whole time I felt like I had no idea who she was, I had no idea what she was thinking, I had no idea why she was doing what she was doing. So whenever she did an action, I found myself questioning it. I'm like, do you really mean that? Why are you doing that? Are you doing this for some other subverted reason that I don't know about? So I just didn't believe her whenever she said anything or whenever she did anything. I didn't believe her relationship with Snow. I thought it was somehow orchestrated to achieve some goal of hers, even though I never knew what that goal was. I really do think she is supposed to be an elusive character, but I also think we were supposed to like her, and I didn't really like her because I didn't understand her. I didn't feel like I knew her at all. And then another important secondary character is Sejanus, who is one of Snow's classmates at the academy. He is also paired up with a tribute. He is kind of like new money, and he actually came from a district after the war, came from District 2, and his family moved to the capital. Snow's kind of jealous of him because he is so wealthy, and also doesn't like him because he's other. Sejanus is an interesting character because he is definitely a rebel sympathizer. He does not like the capital, he does not like the Hunger Games, he doesn't like any of it. He's like fighting against it the whole time, which makes you want to like him. Like, he definitely has moral intentions, but he is also a very, very selfish character. Like, all of his actions throughout the story are to make him feel morally comfortable. Even though he laments like wanting to help people and wanting to make change, all of his actions suggest that he actually has selfish motivations and he just doesn't want to feel guilty. And to me, this made him a weak character and an unlikable character. I wanted him to actually evolve from those selfish actions into realizing that what he really needed to do was try and gain enough power to actually help people and be in a position where he could make changes and fight for what was right. And I know that's very hard to do in this world, but I just didn't think that he evolved enough as a character to be likable, and I just was annoyed by him a lot, and his actions were just idiotic and stupid. I don't think Sejanus got the fate he deserved ultimately, but at the same time, I didn't really feel a lot about him other than annoyance. So ultimately, I think he could have been characterized better. I wanted to root for him, but I just didn't. Aside from the development of Snow's character, one of the other most interesting parts of this book was the comparison between the 10th Hunger Games and the 74th that occurs in the original series. When reading the original series, I always just assumed that the Hunger Games was the Hunger Games. I never really thought about its evolution or that it would even have an evolution. I kind of just thought it came into being and it was the way it was. But here in the 10th Hunger Games, everything was even more inhumane. The district tributes were really treated as animals, like chained up and carted around in livestock trains and thrown in the zoo to wait out their time until the games. It was just very strange to me, and I think it was mostly to highlight that the people in the capital think that the people in the districts are no better than animals. I think it was just a very heavy-handed display of that, but it was interesting to see the differences. I also was surprised at how low tech the 10th Hunger Games were. Literally like an old sporting arena, and they never change it. They just do the same thing every year. The tributes don't even know when other tributes have died because they don't have any kind of announcement system. They don't have cameras on everybody at all times. It's really just like very basic, and it was just really interesting. The 10th Hunger Games too, I think, was recorded in this book because it's really important. It seems like it's very much the catalyst for things changing and becoming more high-tech as different things and different ideas get thrown around in this book for future games. It's also interesting in the fact that because President Snow is a mentor in these games and he was such a big part of them and he really came to understand what they were and what they were about, you can kind of see how with the things he didn't agree with, how those might be changed later on when he does become president. So I thought that was all super interesting and a good thing to explore within the story. So let's get into the pacing a little bit. While I really appreciated the deep dive into Snow's character and thought that it was good how developed he was and how much I came to understand him, I do think that the same thing could have been accomplished in 200 pages less. This is over a 500-page book, and it was so boring. It was so boring, so slow. Nothing freaking happened until like the last 50 pages. It's just like slowly meandering through this story, through this year. There's like 3 different parts. There's like the pre-games, the games, and then after the games. It was so boring. Even the games were boring. Like, nothing was happening. It was so slow. And then that terribly contrasted with the ending. In the last 50 pages, so many things happened so quickly without explanation and so conveniently that it really just threw off the entire book. I said this in my 24-hour Hunger Games readathon. Suzanne Collins is not the best at pacing her novels. I thought both Catching Fire and Mockingjay were very poorly paced, but this is even more poorly paced because it's so freaking boring for most of the book, and then the ending is so quick. It doesn't make any sense. So I really would have appreciated an improvement in the pacing, but alas, did not happen. A big reason why it's getting 2 stars from me. Another aspect of this book that I think is important to discuss is that a lot of parts as read like a political manifesto. I am a political science undergraduate major, so I have read all of these like political philosophers like Locke and Hobbes. This book is basically Suzanne Collins' own version of Thomas Hobbes and John Locke's works. Like, this is just a state of nature discussion. It is basically like really doing a deep dive and exploring how humans behave without a government. And while I appreciate an exploration of that, and I think that it is a good thing to explore in a dystopian world like this, I thought it was way too heavy-handed. It just jumped out of the page at me. It was so obvious, especially in all of the discussions of control and the positives of the war, Snow and Sejanus's discussions. It just seemed too heavy-handed. These themes were present in the original series, but they weren't so heavy-handed. I personally don't like politics in my book ever. It's just not something I want to read about. And while this isn't necessarily political, it definitely is trying to become its own political philosophy, expanding on the state of nature discussion. And like, the state of nature discussion doesn't really need to be discussed any further. Like, I feel like pretty much everything that can be said about the state of nature discussion has been said, so I didn't really need to read about it in this book that I was trying to read for fun. I don't know, that maybe that's just me. I just really think that we could have been shown that this is what we were considering instead of directly told that this is what we were considering, and I think it would have been stronger and ultimately would have made more sense in the book. But there was just too much heavy-handed direct discussion of the state of nature, and I just didn't need it or want it or care. So that concludes my spoiler-free thoughts. Overall, I thought that this was boring, but it does bring a lot to Snow's character and helps you understand him better. Although I would have liked to learn how he becomes president in this book, which we don't, but whatever. It is getting 2 stars from me. Now, getting into the spoilers, the only really spoiler thing that I want to discuss is the ending. I didn't like the ending. I thought it was way too open-ended for a book this long and meandering. I also thought it was way too fast. I did not really understand it, if we're being completely honest. So basically, in the end, Snow thinks that he is going to be caught for murdering some people in District 12 because the murder weapon is still out there with his fingerprints on it. So he is afraid that he is going to be caught and hanged. He decides with Lucy Gray that he is going to run away into the woods, maybe try and go find the free people in the north, aka District 13, and they go out and they escape. He decides that he doesn't really like roughing it. He is afraid he's never going to be happy and he's never going to feel safe, and he doesn't want to run his whole life. So then when he finds the murder weapon by the lake, he's like, oh great, I can just dispose of this and go back to my other life. At this point, Lucy Gray has gone off to like gather some food or something. Snow goes out looking for her because he kind of realizes that Lucy Gray also knows what he did, so he needs to kill her as well and dispose of the murder weapon. At least that's what I think that he's thinking. And so he goes out and he can't find her. Then he just starts randomly shooting at her. We don't know if he kills her or not. We have no idea. Then he goes back to base and continues with his life. It's so weird. So I never understood Lucy Gray's character throughout the whole thing. I thought she was faking her relationship with Snow for some reason. I couldn't figure out what reason. And this ending kind of confirms that theory for me in a way. I don't know if she was trying to lure him out there to kill him herself because she understood that he was a dangerous person. I don't really know, and I wish that we had explored that more. Also, the ending was just way too fast and way too convenient, especially with how slow and meandering the rest of the book was. The last 50 pages, things just happened in such rapid succession and so conveniently that it didn't really make a whole lot of sense and it didn't really fit with the story. I just really wish that we understood Lucy Gray better as a character, understood what happened to her, where she went, if she died, if he killed her, why she decided at the last minute to turn on him and hide, or like maybe trying to kill him. I don't really know what was going on. Maybe it was all in Snow's head and he was just going crazy. I don't know. It's so weird. The ending is so weird. What are your guys' interpretations of the ending? Please tell me down below. I'm so curious to know. I really have no idea what to think about it. I just thought it was so bizarre. Murphy Napier actually thinks that they're going to announce a sequel soon, and that's why the ending was so strange and open-ended, which is f***ing annoying. Like, I don't want another book like this. Like, this book was shit. Why would I want to read a sequel? I don't know. I'm tired. This book is tiring. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this discussion of the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. I really appreciate you being here. Make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you feel so inclined. Also, all relevant links, including my socials and a link to this book, will be in the description down below. And yeah, thank you again. I will see you in the next one. Bye.